Morning, everyone. Welcome to this edition of the Agora Discourse. The topic today is countering disinformation and protecting information integrity in Uganda. If you follow Agora, you will notice that from the beginning of the week, we started a campaign under a hashtag counter disinformation UG. The background is that Agora is a platform, a digital public square, through which we all should express ourselves, contribute to civic discourse. But increasingly, this space and other spaces before it have been polluted by this creature, disinformation. So we thought that we should collectively start an initiative, a campaign, to polish up on our, I imagine most of us have encountered these terms, disinformation, misinformation, but to kind of keep it in conversation, understand the things that we don't understand about it, understand a little more about the tools to counter this disinformation. And by way of introducing the subject, disinformation is basically the deliberate spread of false information with the intention of causing harm. Some people confuse it with misinformation. Misinformation is the spread of false information without the intention of causing harm. Now, in our topic, there's also that term, information integrity. This basically refers to accuracy, consistency, and the reliability of the information or the information ecosystem. Now, as you can imagine, disinformation then and its twin misinformation and their clansmate hate speech are major threats to information integrity. Disinformation misshapes public opinion, distorts reality, undermines trust in institutions like the media, political parties, and even our own perceptions. Manifestations, some of the things you may have seen are manipulated images of, favorite politicians or public figures to make you see them in a certain light, mostly negative. They are deep fake videos. Some of our experts here will help us break down some of these terms. They are coordinated campaigns. A hashtag starts within a few minutes. It's trending, and those behind the hashtags, some of the accounts are not authentic, are bots. Then they appear to push false narratives to influence certain conversations. Of course, the rise of digital platforms like X have made information travel faster, often making it harder or making it much more difficult to verify and correct the falsehoods that are spread. Artificial intelligence has even made that even much worse. It enables people to create and spread distorted information on a massive scale. Some of the examples you may be familiar with, there's a research entity called Digital Forensic Lab. In 2021, ahead of the 2021 elections, it's an affiliation to the Washington, D.C. based Atlantic Council. Ahead of the 2021 election, it announced that it had noticed a group of Twitter or X accounts and Facebook pages engaging in what they call suspicious online behavior. These accounts were using fake and duplicate or both accounts to manage pages, comment on other people's content, impersonate others, reshare posts to make them appear like they were very popular in some cases when they weren't. Following the findings of Digital Forensic Lab, between January 8th and 10th, 2021, Meta, which is the parent company of Facebook, and Twitter disabled hundreds of user accounts and Instagram profiles of some of the supporters of especially the ruling party. But I should mention that there was also negative activity from the side of the opposition. So there were accounts belonging to supporters of the opposition, especially the National Unity Platform, which were also sharing information that wasn't truthful and that targeted or aimed to tarnish the image of the other candidates they disagreed with or they were competing with. Shortly after, President Museveni accused Facebook of arrogance, and within a week, the Uganda Communications Commission, which is the communications sector regulator, banned and disabled access to Meta's platform, including Facebook, Instagram, name it. The other examples you may have seen when we were running the Uganda Parliament exhibition at Agora, which some of you, most of you participated in, a number of X accounts emerged targeting members of Agora and other participants in the exhibition who are sharing information that's aimed at holding the officials at Parliament accountable. You may have also seen the activity around the March to Parliament protests. Again, X accounts targeted, belonging especially to supporters of the ruling party, targeted among others, the US ambassador, and accusing him of being behind the March to Parliament protests. They targeted activists at Agora, Chapter 4, and other organizations, saying they were all sorts of things. Some of the videos showed that they owned mega houses, had made a lot of money, and were just, we have experts, we have people who experienced this firsthand who will take us to the detail. There's also been campaigns targeting members of the opposition, like Joel Senyonyi. With me on the panel tonight, Agather Atuhaire, who's our team leader at Agora. I don't know if Angelo Izama has joined us, but he will also be joining us. Angelo Izama is a journalist and a technology enthusiast. Angelo has been writing about technology and society lately. We also have Gerard Walulia, who's a senior lecturer at the Department of Journalism and Communications at Makerere University. And lastly, we have Mase Abiro, who's a researcher at That. That is a research lab, an organization dedicated to combating digital threats against truth, democracy, and social unity. And of course, we have you, our wonderful audience. The idea with this space is that we exchange knowledge. A lot of you may have questions, comments, ideas about how we can deal with this problem. Without wasting much more of our time, I'll invite Godwin. Do we know if Gerard has accepted to be a speaker or has succeeded?
No, he's not a speaker as of now. But I don't know what the problem could be.
Okay, I'll check
because I sent an invite.
I'll check in with Gerard. I'm going to ask Agatha to start us off because a lot of the Agatha has personally been a victim of targeted campaigns, disinfo campaigns, because of the work activism she's been doing with us at Agora. Agatha, I will start by requesting you to talk briefly about your experience when you were leading the campaign, the Uganda Parliament exhibition. Some of the reaction, some of the action you received from these accounts, the targeted behavior that at whose receiving end you are at. Please, Agatha, are you there? Agatha, I think Agatha is having.
Hi, I'm there. Please, sorry, refresh.
Did you catch the question?
No, please.
Oh, you didn't. Okay. No, I was saying that when you are leading the Uganda Parliament exhibition, but even before other campaigns, you were personally a target of some of these campaigns. Talk briefly about what that campaign was about, the Uganda Parliament exhibition, and your own experience of the manifestations of disinformation.
Hi, good evening, everyone. So, I finally have an opportunity to talk about everything that has been said about me. And as you say, this started long before the Parliament exhibition. I think as soon as I got into this space, I started getting attacks about, and mostly it would be about, usually really, I think for women, there's one line they start with, they start shaming. So I started receiving messages where people were tagging me and saying she sleeps around for information. She sleeps with people in Parliament. Then I had she has 4 children with 4 men. She has children with people. Sorry. I was calling, so I think had I dropped?
Just a brief pause.
Yeah. So I remember a friend of mine one day calling me, laughing and saying, when you see people talking about the fathers of your children, one can think you have 10 children. Like, how can 2 children now all of a sudden have so many fathers? Because there were those people doing that and saying I have children with people in Parliament. So it of course went on, and it peaked during the parliamentary exhibition. As soon as we I think we announced it on Friday, so that whole weekend they started. And most times you realize, I've not been keen, but people like Spire and Godwin here usually immediately go to their profile. I never remember that. Like, I think I'm dismissive of those people so much that I never remember to even, but you'd find that all of a sudden these are accounts you're seeing almost for the first time, but you find that they have a blue tick and whatever. But there's always one characteristic. They say the same thing. So they'd be like 10, and they're saying the same thing. So I remember they first circulated a video of me dancing in a short dress, and I said, "You see, she's a prostitute. She's a whore. See what she is doing." And this was that weekend. So of course, for us, we ignored and started the campaign. As we were doing that, they were also writing about Spire. I think that's when they said Spire had how many wives and I mean concubines, and that he had abandoned his wife. I later learned, but this is much, much later, that on Saturday, just before we started the March Parliament, there was a meeting that was called in the office of the Speaker. They even formed a WhatsApp group called Fifth Floor Emergencies. And in that meeting, the Speaker was saying, I cannot be here having sleepless nights while you people are sleeping. So everyone had to do something. So people got people, paid them, and they would come and report. Today we have attacked the leading persons in the exhibition. But yeah, so it was first mainly about my sex life, and then when they saw that wasn't working, because of course I kept, yeah, firstly people would ignore it, but even if you're unlucky and they respond, you feel like you are stupid. If you're unlucky, I mean, if you're the account that is peddling that, and people were asking them, so what if she has four men, I mean 4 children from 4 men? And yeah, but even as they saw that I wasn't bothered by it, I wasn't phased, I didn't stop doing what I was doing. And I think that's the moment when they went to re-strategize, to look for something that could achieve the objective. The objective was to character assassinate, to erode your credibility and the trust people have in you. So they went and regrouped. Now, after the Parliament exhibition, there was March Parliament. And now the information was different. It was about money. The first was that I had paid protesters, that I had gotten money from the EU and paid protesters. And that was really peddled, and everyone was writing about it, and the security picked up on it. I received some calls. Then when the protesters came out of prison and said, but no one paid us to one by one, most of them came out and refuted that claim. So now they went to, and like someone has said before, I think the most dangerous disinformation is where people say half truths. So they will say one thing which is true, but they will add more. So that now the people out there, if they confirm that one of the things is true, they will start thinking that the rest is as well true. So now they said that we had received $1 million from USAID. And we said, okay, so how is that a problem? Because I remember asking one of them, I didn't know that he was part of the group now. This is a person I had seen as also a human rights activist. I said, okay, so what's the problem? Is it illegal to receive money from donors? Or are you saying we received money and we didn't do what we were supposed to do? So later, what they wanted to do was to say that we received that money to pay protesters. Now, of course, when you reach that point, you realize, and that's the thing I think about disinformation, that people are deliberately saying lies. So even if you say the truth, you come and say this is not true, that's not what they're interested in. So they say Agatha and Agora took money to pay protesters, got money from USAID but didn't account. Some even wrote to USAID to stop funding us. Then there was also came in March Parliament money. Apparently, I ate the money. Yet I came without anyone asking. After the last person had left jail, I came and with Mutuzo Michelin that had received the money with me, and we said, this is how much money we received. This is how much money was used in as far as catering for the people in jail and getting them out was concerned. And this is how much money there is. The only problem was that these people wanted me to distribute this money to the protesters, some of the protesters themselves. And I said, I don't think I'll do that. If you guys want us to return the money, I would rather return it to the people that gave it to me. I would think that the most sustainable, the most logical thing is to keep this money, so that if tomorrow other people are protesting and have been arrested, we are not going back to beg for arms and help. So of course some people were not happy, and it came and say, oh, Agora took our money, Agora became Agora. I come back and say, this money has nothing to do with Agora. People asked me, can I receive that money? And that money is with me as a person on my account, that Agora has nothing to do with. Yeah, but so yeah, those are some of the things that I have heard about, and most of them are very laughable, but some of them are actually believed. I remember Godwin Toko telling me a story during March Parliament when he found a police officer talking about me, or about Agora, I think about me, saying, oh, she received $1 billion, 1 billion, I think, 1 billion shillings, I think, and they were talking not knowing that Toko knows me. So there are those that are going to believe that. So the merchants of disinformation, I think, in some way achieve their objective. Yeah, but there are those that see through them. Especially that there was one characteristic, that it was the same people that are coming to attack me, but and they would be people working for people that I have exposed. So it started from Parliament. It would be Chris Obore, it would be Sarit Joseph, then later it was people around them, and those people would make it very obvious. Sometimes even those that maybe haven't been paid yet to attack me would tag Obore, would tag Anita Among. So many people see through that. You still have those, that the unsuspecting people that believe that, but yeah. So that has been my experience.
Thank you very much, Agatha. I am, and thanks. And someone out there may be saying, "Oh, this is just an Agatha or Agora experience." The disinformation ecosystem has, the following characters. It has the originators. These are mostly political operatives who create false claims to discredit opponents or sway public sentiment. Some are government agencies, like in the case of the 2021 elections situation, which I'll ask someone to elaborate on. You had a government agency where key personnel there, their accounts had to be closed because they were involved in this behavior. Sometimes you have foreign actors, you have corporations, you have pressure groups, and individuals. That's under the originators. Then you have the amplifiers, social media influencers. So some of the actors Agatha was talking about, who are hired to spread what has been created by either the political operatives, or you have automated bots. These are not real accounts. These are, artificial accounts. There's no real human being behind, that also are used. You have troll networks, you have paid content creators, you have shady PR firms. Then you have the distributors. These are social media platforms like WhatsApp. WhatsApp in Uganda is notorious because a lot of what is shared there is not like it's only people in that group that know. Then they share to other groups. You have Facebook, you have TikTok, you have TikTokers who, then you have, the likes of Telegram, you have online forums and blogs. Then the fourth category is consumers, innocent people with limited media literacy, but sometimes sophisticated disinformation campaigns even escape or catch people who are media savvy, who are tech savvy, people who have pre-existing biases and emotional triggers. With that bit of insight, I'll ask Gerard Warulia. Gerard is a senior lecturer at the Department of Journalism and Communications at Makerere University. Gerard, I know you have, taught journalists about this phenomenon. Please break it down for us. Also talk a bit about, because someone may assume that this started with X, a bit of historical context, but also how information is weaponized by the different actors we've been talking about. Gerard, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Unfortunately, my connection is not very stable, but whenever you don't hear me, you try to remind me so that I don't speak to myself. Okay. Like most of us are already aware, this act of disinformation is not necessarily new, but the coming of the internet has given it a new agency that within a second, information can spread to so many people. So that's why we are more concerned than we have ever been before. In the past, I think much of the information at a low scale, but now we see that the effect information beyond an individual. So that's why we need to work towards fighting disinformation. I think picking from where Agatha stopped, that disinformation sometimes tends to target people who saturate important critical information that citizens need. So people who are not happy about such information can target sources of information so that they can discredit their information, that people cannot follow them. If the sources of information, particularly, they can attack them using a gender kind of focus, by, for instance, body shaming them and using societal stereotypes, such as maybe if a journalist is not married, that becomes an issue. I have done some bit of research around this area, and you could hear journalists telling you how many times they have been told that they are not beautiful, that they are short, that they are marriage failures. So these are some of the weapons that people who are purveying this information tend to use against female journalists, so that they can kind of discourage them, so that they go into hibernation and stop any saturation of critical information about some of these actors. Maybe you might need to prompt me again so that I can move in a different direction.
I'll come back to you, Gerard. Thank you very much for that insight. I now would like to go to Mase. Mase, you and your colleagues at Threats have been doing reporting about and research about some of the activity we've seen in elections in Kenya, around political processes in Kenya, in Rwanda. I think you are also involved in the 2021 research that looked at, I don't know if it was done in 2021, but it looked at the sort of the part of hashtags between the ruling party supporters of President Museveni and his handlers and the supporters of NUP. Talk to us briefly about what your findings were and the general trends that you've been observing regarding disinformation and how it manifests in Uganda.
Thank you so much, Haggai. So from our side, I think one of the things that, again, going back to mis and disinformation from the definition that you gave, some of the trends that we've seen over the past years have been, of course, its evolution. Because back then, if I'm not mistaken, if we're to look at the proliferation of social media and how technology has sort of intersected with democracy, it dates back to 2000. But of course, for the context of, let's say, global South actors, it is up until 2011. That's when we saw technology having an intersection with democracy, but as well seeing how social media plays a huge role when it comes to shaping public opinion and public discourse. Over time, again, we have, as a research team, we have seen a lot of trends from, of course, coordinated attacks by political actors against other political actors, but as well, we've also been able to see ways in which disinformation is spread. One of the things that we've noticed, again, over time within the different elections and within the different countries that we've monitored is, of course, the biggest is the use of influencers. However, I think back in 2021, it posed a question for us as a team on how to visualize all this information, because again, to the layman, when we look at social media, we have a perception that when someone tweets or writes about something, it has no connection. So one of the things we decided to do was to analyze how Twitter interactions, of course, form public discourse. And during, I think 2021, we got to understand how communities create influence or create narratives or influence public opinion and perception. And the findings, of course, from 2021 up to now is we've been able to see evolution of disinformation on different platforms. We know that platforms currently have changed their content moderation policies to assume the free speech monogram dialogue that Elon Musk has constantly put out. So, of course, in terms of free speech, we are seeing a lot of hate speech disinformation across platforms. That is to say, from 2021 up until today. The other aspect that we are starting to notice again within the misinformation and disinformation ecosystem is the use of, I would call it the use of satire, which is again a huge challenge when it comes to content moderation. Satire, sarcasm, because of course, as tech platforms and as tech companies grow, the biggest challenge that comes is for a region that is like Africa, that has a lot of cultural nuances, or even for a country like Uganda, there's so much language nuances and cultural nuances that affect how people interact on online platforms. So this, in terms of flagging disinformation and misinformation, it becomes really hard because, again, culture and language play a very critical role in having to understand the information ecosystem. So within the social media platforms, we have been able to see a lot of misinformation, but also disinformation, but that is skewed towards more of culture, language, that of course goes undetected with tech platforms. The other thing that we're seeing right now is, of course, the AI evolution, which is the biggest concern for most people. Of course, within Africa and within Uganda specifically, we've been able to see instances of what we call cheap fakes. They're not yet sophisticated fakes. They're just, for instance, somebody picks up a face of, say, a prominent politician and places it on a different personality. I think we've noticed that, especially around, if I'm not mistaken, Instagram ads that have, I think, Raymond Mujuni's face on them. And then the rest of the body is not really his, but then they always have catchy phrases that he's been arrested for something. So we're seeing a lot of cheap fakes coming out, especially when it comes to disinformation patterns. The other thing we are noting, and I think we're starting to see it crop up in Uganda, is the trend in which disinformation and misinformation is changing trajectory in terms of social media platform. So it's no longer Twitter, it's no longer Facebook. However, it's taking a rabbit hole through TikTok. What do I mean by that? Because of the way the TikTok algorithm has been set, we are seeing a lot of mis and disinformation happening more on TikTok that is going unverified, unchecked. Because again, the 30-second time limit that TikTok gives for users allows people to engage with more and more content. So we're definitely seeing a lot of misinformation taking up a new approach or a new frontier, which is through TikTok platforms. The other thing that we are noticing again with the misinformation and disinformation is the aspects of hate speech is sort of starting to crop up within the Ugandan ecosystem. Hate speech, both in terms of hate speech as a result of disinformation itself. And I think we're noticing it becoming more rampant as time continues going on. But of course, again, the biggest question that we as researchers have is in terms of content moderation, how are the algorithms adjusting? Because of course, again, recently with the changes within the tech platforms are opening their policies on free speech. They're saying, okay, it's okay for us to actually put out content without any form of moderation. However, the biggest question for us researchers is, to what extent does that actually cause harm to people offline? Because again, some of these policies eventually have ripple effects offline that can sometimes be catastrophic. What we're also seeing, again, just to add to the AI bit, is the aspect of the lack of detection tools. Again, because Uganda is part of the global south when it comes to detection, but also deciphering mis and disinformation, it's becoming increasingly hard because we're having AI advancements that are too fast, but also we're having certain tools that are becoming obsolete or that are being discontinued by platforms. For instance, we recently did a research on how best we could detect deepfakes that come from the global south, that is to say Africa, Southeast Asia. And one of the things that we realized was over time, most of the content that these platforms or these tools were flagging as deepfakes were actually real videos that actually occurred. So again, in terms of detection platforms and detection tools, we are having a bit of a challenge because we do not have enough data sets to run through already existing tools and models. But again, the phenomenon is constantly changing. The disinformation ecosystem is constantly changing. So how do we start keeping track of that? And I think finally, the other thing that we're starting to notice, again, as Agatha mentioned previously, the targeting of female politicians and actors, we are definitely seeing a lot of that happen. But now we are having it, we're seeing how it's combining mis and disinformation with actual revenge pornography, which is starting to take shape, especially as female actors or females take part in political processes. So we're definitely seeing a lot of that coming across various social media platforms. And of course, the ripple effects that they have to female participation in electoral processes those are questions that we keep asking ourselves of how can we actually create solutions to this. But it's again hard from a researcher perspective because the data that we have is still very scanty. We've tried to collaborate with a few partners here and there to understand the information ecosystem, but it keeps getting harder and harder as, of course, as technology advances and as changes happen within social media platforms, but also within the geopolitical landscape.
Thank you very much. Masi. That's quite a bit for us to chew on, but thanks for sharing some of the trends you are observing. I'll come back to you, Gerard. there's this appetite for negative information. Some of the words that people use online, the language, cook, cookado, cook. Like when someone is being targeted, there's that desire, that interest, and for a lot of people, it's like entertainment. I get the sense that many people, just treat it as another person being cooked. Just break it down for us. The implications of disinformation when a female political candidate is targeted, when an opposition politician or any political candidate, a public figure, is targeted with disinformation. How does it affect the public? What do we lose? Gerard, are you there?
His microphone is muted. Maybe he's talking with muted microphone.
Gerard, let me message him. Mase, do you think you can, or Agatha, I mean, when you are, as we wait for Gerard, when you are sharing the information you are sharing during the Parliament exhibition, you're sharing credible information and you're facing these attacks. What does it do to people who are viewing, who are receiving this information? And I imagine you may have seen that from the feedback. Let's say you shared this information and someone says, "Oh, but you are being paid." How did that affect your information, the information you are sharing, and the intention behind sharing it?
Okay, so that's something that I have always wondered about. Just hold on a bit. No, it's okay. So from people that want to come and discredit me, and I say, I say to myself, how can they not learn from the person they're attacking? I don't think there's a time I have shared information without something to back it up. For example, in the Parliament, during the Parliament exhibition, I shared information with requisition documents with names that were receiving money for apparently corporate social responsibility, but that was ultimately being picked by those people on behalf of Anita Among. And all the discussions we had, we asked Chris Obere, is the information we shared correct? No one ever disputed it. No one ever debunked it. And I always think that people who want to come at me to discredit me, they need to come in that way. If you want to say that Agatha has stolen money, has eaten money from us to Parliament, have something that will make people believe that, or even maybe plant a seed of doubt. So I think for me, what this has done, that I am sharing verified information, but also attaching the necessary evidence in most cases, is that it earns you the trust of people. You become a credible source of information. I have seen it many times, people here asking and saying, if it has come from Agatha, it must be true. Especially about a subject they know that I have reported on for long, let's say Parliament or political prisoners. So I think that in a sea of disinformation, social media right now, everyone says what they want to say. Everyone has a phone and data and can access an account. They write whatever. So people know who to believe, whose wall to go to if they are looking for information they should believe. Now, I think the agents of this disinformation, that's what they were targeting. That so she has established herself as this credible person. Let's sort of impeach that. Yeah, so I don't know if this answers the question, but I think that in a way it's what everyone that wants to have an audience, to have an influence should aim for. That for me, I will distinguish myself from everyone who just comes on and writes whatever they want to write and say that I'm going to write someone backed with evidence, backed with facts and figures, and I'm going to seek to verify information that I get. Most of the time, I will get information. I will even trust the source of that information, but if there's no supporting document, I'm not going to share it. I'll know it in my heart. I'll meet the person and know this person stole money in my heart, but I will tell a friend, but I'm not going to publish it. And that's not really the standard of proof in journalism. I think in journalism, you and I, we have We have stories where we have just said our sources have said this because you trust your source. But there's now a problem that you get when you become like me and you go and study law. You want to apply that standard of proof that is required in a court. But also there's another problem that you get when you've become sort of a person of interest. Everyone is waiting for this one day that they will get you like this. So it can even be true, but if you cannot go before a court and show that it is true, if you don't have that documentation or any sort of proof, people will, bring lawsuits against you, and there's nothing you can do. So I think mainly I am driven by that. I don't think other people understand they like sort of appreciate how important that is. I also don't know if people think about the implications, the consequences of what they write and put out there, or if it's just, or if we see social media as, as a place where we can just fantasize or write whatever or make money because there's someone who obviously wants Agatha destroyed and this person has money to give me. Yeah. So basically that's what I think it comes to. I just hope that our audiences, that the people become that sort of vigilant in that way, that if someone shares information, as long as they have not proven it, no one should even engage with it. But
Okay, thanks.
if it is someone that they know have done this and and the person has a track record of this is something they have studied or this is something they have experience in, or this is a professional person, maybe then, but not just every Tom, Dick and Harry and they write and it's taken as gospel truth.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Agatha. Gerard, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, I wanted you to talk about, what is at stake when, disinformation is let, when we allow it to spread. What does it do to the credibility of, journalists, people who share, or public officials or political processes? If you may talk a bit about polarization, because online often a subject comes and it doesn't matter what the facts are. People are in different bubbles and they are going at each other. And it's usually, people don't realize that the guys behind, the merchants of disinformation are behind the emotion that's driving them. Please comment a bit about, the impact, what disinformation takes away from us and our political processes or civic space. Gerard?
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now. Toko, can you hear Gerard? Agatha, can you hear Gerard?
We can hear you, can't hear Gerald. Also, Angelo is
great.
here and I've given him the microphone. Mr. Izama, I have sent an invitation to speak.
Okay, I think there's a glitch on my end.
I think Gerard dropped to a listener.
I see. Okay. Angelo, has Angelo become
Not yet.
a speaker? Okay.
I'm going to send Gerald the invitation again.
Okay. Apologies, guys. We're having a bit of technical glitches here and there. Mase, you had the question. Are you able to speak to it? Any aspect of it? Any aspect of it? It could be polarization, like how disinformation causes polarization, how it corrodes the civic space, anything, how it undermines the credibility of certain processes, anything that you've observed in the course of the research you've been doing.
So, in terms of polarization, we've seen a lot of disinformation having real life consequences, and I think I'll draw this back home to what, of course, actors, again, capitalizing on particular events. I think for Ugandans, we've been monitoring or we've been very keen on what the conflicts between, again, M23 and, of course, the two countries that are involved. And one of the patterns that we've noticed, again, with disinformation is the fact that it stirs a lot of emotions within the public. And we've seen that happen not only with the tensions within Rwanda, but an example of this can be clearly looked at in Ethiopia's Tigray region, where of course, there was a lot of information or misinformation spreading across social media platforms in Amharic, and this eventually led to the Tigray crisis in 2021. To draw it back home to I think what happened during 2021 was we saw so much information, misinformation and disinformation on various social media platforms, Facebook, I think Twitter as well during that time. And one of the effects that we saw was actually it having a trickle down effect on what we termed as the November I don't want to call it what happened in November. So when it comes to, again, disinformation, the objective for disinformation is to actually create chaos. And from a researcher perspective, it's always good to understand that within the chaos, there's always a narrative being pushed. And one of the things that we saw loss of lives in November 2021. We've seen again disinformation currently with what's going on globally. We are seeing disinformation play a role in the Pakistan-India crisis that's happening right now, because again there's a bit of warmongering within that disinformation ecosystem. So drawing it back to, does it actually have consequences in real life? Yes, it does. Another case in point was seen again in the Philippines during the Rohingya crisis, because there was a lot of misinformation and disinformation happening within the ecosystem. It was very easy for, again, big tech, political actors, but also human rights bodies to take a blind eye to what was happening, because, as I mentioned earlier, within the information ecosystem, there are so many variables at play. You're looking at tech companies, you're looking at the motives tech companies have, but as well, you're looking at the fact that, for instance, within certain regions or certain contexts, tech companies do not have people to moderate such content or even flag such content if it is harmful, because, again, cultural nuances play a huge role in determining the extent to which disinformation goes. The ability for tech companies to hire people who are experienced in that particular region and understand that particular context goes a long way. So the consequences that we see, again, of big tech platforms, bad actors, it becomes a mix and match of, we call it a bomb waiting to happen. And I think for our ecosystem within Uganda, we are seeing a lot of that. But the biggest challenges that keep, again, coming to play are cultural nuances, language barrier, because, again, in our local dialects, it's very easy for us to spread disinformation, but from when you speak about something, there's a way somebody locally is going to understand, but for big tech, they won't understand it. So such content eventually goes unchecked. And for people who are not very keen, it stirs up a lot of emotion, a lot of conversations, of course, outside social media. And eventually this can actually lead to civil unrest.
I'm going to ask you to
But
first
also,
hold it there, Mercy, and I bring our other panelists. Is that okay, Mercy? Yes? Okay, thanks.
yes, that's
Gerard,
the
can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Are you able to pick up from where the conversation has, or do you want me to repeat the question I had asked?
I think I had your question to be about the consequences of misinformation and disinformation, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I think to start with, one of the worrying issues with disinformation is that it tends to emerge from credible sources that you would normally trust. For instance, sources within the state agencies that you think should be acting in good faith. These are people we should ordinarily trust. These are people whom the journalists interview on a regular basis. But when they become sources of disinformation, then it becomes a concern, because we wonder whether we can continue to rely on their information. Of course, if people are going to their decisions on information which is either half truth or not true at all, then it becomes a serious issue that whatever decisions they are going to take are going to be wrong decisions. This is especially the case during elections, when people are deciding who to support and who not to support. The other major concern has been highlighted by the previous speaker, that there is now a relationship between these platforms. There is also there is a coordination between online what is offline, that conversations are online, whether they're based on false into in offline conversations, some stations continue to spread them further, even to people who don't have digital access. So this means that the impact of disinformation can be far-reaching in that sense. So the other consequence is that some of the actors, for instance, journalists, when there is a disinformation campaign against actors who spread critical information about some people, once they attack, sometimes they are forced to stop doing their work. And when this happens, it is the citizens who lose, because whoever succeeds them might not have the ability to do whatever work these people who have retreated were doing. So it means that we are going to get an information vacuum where these people have been operating. I think the whole issue is that when people who are purveying this information succeed, private interests take precedence over the public good, and that in the end makes a very big damage to society as a whole.
Thank you very much, Gerard. Angelo Izama, can you hear us?
I'm clear.
Yeah, great. You've been looking into how society interacts with technology. What are some of the things you've been learning about how we interact with disinformation, and how technology has made things worse or better, and what we can learn from those sorts of trends?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me and for Agora for hosting this conversation. I've been listening in, and I really thank Gerald, Agatha, and Mercy, who has covered tremendous ground on some of the trends that we're seeing. On the technology alone, I would say that a classification of what is at stake might be useful here. Because, for example, first, as Mercy has indicated, and as Gerald and Agatha have, you have the owners of the platforms, but there we also have to add like the innovators too. So at a structural level, you've got, say, Meta, Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram, Apple, Elon Musk's X, and the ecosystem that exists there, Google and others. And then over this past year, I also learned, especially because of the multiple changes happening in the artificial intelligence space, you have got, innovators. So you add their OpenAI or DeepSeek, or even the technology that they rely upon. So the conversation there, for example, can go in the direction of NVIDIA and others. So at a structural level, we just, all of us around the world, including here, we have to deal with the owners of these platforms and their interests, how they view their role, what are the kind of motivations, is particularly profit, that drive them, and what kind of influences can be exercised over them, including, by governments that seek to control where that influence is directed. I think at the second level, Haggai, and all of us listening in, are the players within those platforms. And here, we get to really see, the direction of travel of some of the consequences of dis and misinformation. So on those platforms, you've got governments and political actors who are within there. But also you've got, especially now we have seen in the past US election and in parts of Europe and neighboring here, as Mercy has mentioned, political and cultural movements with known agendas, say in the Sudan conflict, in DRC, or as we travel towards the election here locally. You've seen movements calling themselves, NRM youth, for example, or NUP activists, or MK movement, or things like that, who are players upon those platforms. But finally, you've got you and I and others who are sort of like participants. And that's where the public interest comes in. And I'm going to conclude shortly, but when you think about the participants and you factor in that analytical frame that we have just spoken about, the sheer volume of access that Gerald spoke about, it may include, a vastly superior number of people. So Uganda, for example, has got about 22 million people, slightly more now, who have access to a phone. Of that, maybe 8 to 12 million have access to smartphones. But this is a very kinetic system of effects and outcomes. I'm saying they're kinetic, but as Dr. Gerald mentioned, what he said, online can be translated in ways that are not detectable by the tools that are on those platforms, and therefore they contribute to public consequences which are severe. I want to conclude by saying that in that kinetic framework I've just described, the one thing I've learned over the past year is if you see what's online and you speak to people, it doesn't quite capture completely the emotional content of what goes on these platforms. Marcy did mention that even AI detection tools, because they are advanced elsewhere, they're very incompetent in judging, for example, how this region where we are in, say Uganda, feels about the political events that are in the future. I feel like when I test the past, talking to normal people, that, for example, amongst my Uganda friends, and because I'm a student of history, I feel like the emotional content of what people in the central region feel, what they say to each other, very much is maybe Uganda in 1967 in March or April of that year. But those things can easily be undetected because, like I said, you've got a very kinetic system of information and disinformation. It's a very distributive system, and it makes it very easy for us to be here feeling comfortable, Agai, and then something just jumps out of the blue and surprises us because of the extent to which the infection has spread. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Angelo. And I'm glad you talk about the aspect of the emotional content. Just a few days ago, the Chief of Defense Forces, after the Chief of Defense Forces posted on his X account that that the bodyguard of Bobby Wine, the head of the National Unity Platform, the president of the National Unity Platform, was in his basement learning Runyankore. There was, a clear indication of, emotions, and the manifestation of in that context. Then, the facts get out of the way. Everyone is throwing. So I hear you 100%, and I think that it's our duty then as people who are concerned about these things to discuss them. And I'll come to you, Dr. Gerard, in a context like that. What should journalists, civil society actors, what should they be doing? And in your research, do they have the resources? Are they up to the task?
I think what journalists need to do in the current context is that they need to step up their fact-checking mechanisms, because we know for sure that we can no longer rely on our traditional means of fact-checking and cross-checking information. The media organizations are need to make some kind of cross-media collaborations where they can verify information so that they are sure that whatever they are putting information, mainstream media might not actually be the mainstream, because digital media has kind of taken over the audiences, and it appears like the mainstream media is speaking to a minority audience. However, what is promising is that this minority audience is an influential audience that can still influence affairs. Most of many influential people are on digital platforms, but they continue also media. There is also a need for the media to collaborate with civil society organizations to try and work together to establish fact-checking mechanisms. And unfortunately, examples that I've tried, for instance, I saw one in Nigeria, I think around 2018, when they had an election. There was something called Cross-Check Nigeria, and then I saw another one in Kenya called Fumbua, which was also a fact-checking initiative that involved civil society organizations and the media. But unfortunately, most of these initiatives tend to emerge during an event such as elections, and once elections are done, these initiatives lack funding and therefore stop there. So we need to find a way of putting across sustainable mechanisms that can continue to work even beyond an event such as elections. The other aspect is that I think tech companies also need to work hard, especially in the aspect of moderation, especially by establishing local people who understand the local nuances of what is communicated. Because I can say something, but Angelo might not know it if we don't come from the same cultural background. So these moderation teams need to be staffed with people from different cultural contexts, so that they can decipher and discern information that might contain elements of disinformation or misinformation that any other person might not be able to detect. So I think such initiatives might help us to kind of mitigate. We might not completely eradicate, but we can reduce on the levels of disinformation and misinformation. The other actors also have a role, but whenever we leave the function of regulating information flow to government tends to do it in its own interests. They instead want to control and stifle free speech in the name of controlling misinformation and disinformation. So we need to, the media and civil society organizations and the public generally need to interest themselves in this issue. And in relation to the public, there is a very important need that we need to kind of step up efforts towards media literacy. I think Agatha was speaking about a possibility that there are people who can easily detect the number of citizens who are capable of deciphering what is disinformation and what is not. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Gerard. I'm going to talk a bit about, invite us to talk a bit about motivations. Some of the motivations for disinformation purveyors, one, political. They want to discredit opponents and undermine their credibility, create confusion and doubt around key political issues. There are also economic motivations, clickbait websites that publish sensationalist headlines. You have influencers who are getting money to push certain agendas. Then you have ideological motivations, religious and cultural, social ideologies. Again, one of the things, one of the elements that came up in the 2021, ahead of the 2021 elections, is I think President Museveni even gave an interview to, it must have been The Guardian, and extended that narrative about Bobby Wine being, I think, to quote him, he said, homosexuals love him very much, to kind of present him as that kind of candidate. So you have those sorts of, you have actors who tap into ideological motivations, and then there's personal motivations. People who just are trying to settle personal scores and things like that. Angelo, what of these motivations, what worries you the most in the Ugandan context, especially ahead of the 2026 elections? And I ask this because of where you left off, the sentiments within amongst our brothers and sisters, the Uganda. But also I think it's if that debate that was going on in a few days is anything to go by, it's not just it's not just here, it's across the country. There are people who have these fears around tribal and the tribal undertones and the like that are being fueled by some of these actors. But yeah, what?
Of course.
Yes, sorry.
Thank you, Haggai. I want to start off by saying that, democracy, and especially political competition, is an adversarial sport. Of course, we draw the conclusion after the vote, but by its very nature, it's a contested space. So, for example, members of various political parties will attempt to persuade, the greater majority of people to their line of thinking, and they use emotive tools. And then if that is a fact of political life, another fact of our information age is that the truth itself is contested. It is contested at the basis of ideas, even at the basis of attitudes, at the basis of culture. I am not one of those who says that if you believe that vaccines are bad, that you shouldn't have a right to say it. I think what most of us would agree is that if you say so and you're trying to persuade a greater number of people, there should be a mechanism to present a scientific point of view, for instance. But going back to your question on how various people, feel about what they're being bombarded with, and how it may mutate their responses. There's a really good article I read this week by Dr. Kabumba, who is at Makerere, who says that if you judge the emotional content of laws or lawmaking, it will explain the character of those laws. And I found it really, really refreshing, this viewpoint. And I'd like to apply it here because, in a sense, hate speech is headlined by the word hate, and it is very emotional. It is intended to generate the most fierce human reaction and drive you to even do certain things like commit violence. And so when I look at the emotional temperature of some of these debates, and then I ask myself how they're being portrayed, especially online. And as an analyst or as a consultant, I apply analytical lenses to it. Yes, I am very, very concerned about what is being said here because of the Central Region's historical place in our political contestation. I also think that there is an elevated sense of not ethno-nationalism in Uganda, but a certain type of defensive nationalism in places like the West and the North, where there's a history of what hate has been able to achieve. And coming from the North, I can talk about the violence there for the last 25 years. But overall, I feel that for the 47 million people in Uganda, there's a general feeling of uncertainty and therefore a certain lack of confidence of what is happening in the future. And the reaction online has been one of cynicism, indifference, as Mashi says, a sort of treatment of serious political subjects as subjects of entertainment and sarcasm. There is a certain level of, there's a result to consumerism. And when it comes to digital products, people just look at anything that's put out there as something to be consumed. A lot of young people are online, and I want to conclude here by looking at what the platforms are able to generate, because there'll be people here who are much more competent than I am, who can take a look at a look at this going into the next 6 months. A lot of young people are online, not just to entertain themselves, but to distract themselves, because there's that general sense that we're unsure as a country. But I recently read a report on the digital platforms, and I want to leave this with those of you who are professionals in this field. If you look at, say, Facebook, X, and say TikTok, and I won't talk about WhatsApp because it's much more opaque. Facebook up to now dominates as an engagement platform. So the report I have, which is done by a technology company here in Uganda, says that there are about 9.5 likes per post on average for Facebook, and about 9.5 thousand, by the way. So another 1.2 thousand, so 1.2 thousand post engagement likes. Twitter is influential. It comes in almost second. There are about 13.2 likes per post. So if you have, I don't know how many people you have on your platform, Agai, but I think Agora has got somewhere in the region of 40,000 maybe per post. You've got 9.1 comments per post, but Twitter is their passive audiences there, and it is less of an engagement platform. Twitter is actually much, much less. Sorry, I have my figures wrong. It has 2.6 likes per post and 2.8 comments per post. It is a less engagement platform. TikTok, which we're all paying attention to, as Masi said, is a bit of a beast. And it is driving virality in a direction we still quite can't understand. If you look at then Facebook and TikTok, which is by combination, a place where most young people are represented in their emotions, just the virality alone. Then you look at the offline emotional engagement. Whenever the political temperature rises, I think it is to those two platforms that we should pay attention as to what the emotional content is and what the offline consequences could potentially be, especially here in the Central Region. Thank you, Haggai.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Angelo. I'd like to invite our members of our audience who may have questions, comments. I think that this discussion of disinformation is the kind that we need to address collectively. Every idea counts. I was interviewing one of our colleagues at Agora, Dr. Spire Sentongo. He urged us to, think twice before sharing, think through what we receive, who we are receiving it from. There are ideas from all sorts of places that will be helpful in countering disinformation. So if you have a question, if you have a comment, please let me know, indicate and make your comment or ask your question. As I wait for that, I'll come back to you, Gerard, then Agatha and Masek. That way. What do we, every time we host these spaces or at these such platforms, we are looking to experts for solutions, but sometimes I think the solutions are with us, the people who consumers are indicated, in that ecosystem, as the consumers make a big component, play a big role in the disinformation ecosystem. Gerard, what are some of the things you'd leave with our audience, some of the ideas, some of the tips, call to action maybe in this quest to counter disinformation?
I think I wouldn't differ so much to what Dr. Spire probably said. I think we are contributors to the spread of disinformation. When we get so excited to quickly saturate information we have received without thinking twice on whether this information is true or not. I think we should, as users of these platforms, we need to take responsibility and ensure that whatever we share on our platforms, we are able we are sure, or we have some basis of faith or belief that whatever we are saturating is true to the best of our knowledge. But also, beyond that, there are cases when I have kind of flagged information I have seen being shared on our maybe staff WhatsApp groups, and I quickly tell people that I think what you are sharing is not true, so you need probably to delete it, or you need to think about what you are doing. But in a way, I'm also warning whoever has seen it that they need not to give it so much attention, or they need to kind of verify it. So I think this is a high level verification of information that we as a community of citizens can start with if we are going to ensure sanity in the information ecosystem, that we participate in ensuring that whatever information is shared on our platforms is legitimate. I think I don't have so many ideas beyond that.
Thanks, Gerard. Mase?
Thank you so much, Haggai.
It doesn't have to be tips. It can be, your observations, something that you forgot to mention, or even tips from what you've learned in the course of your research. What an ordinary Haggai should do to make a contribution in countering disinformation, protecting the integrity of our information.
I think I won't differ much from what Dr. Gerard has said. I think media literacy is very important, and it's at the heart of this conversation. I think also it's time for the legal practitioners. I think it's also important to have, legal considerations, especially for tech platforms or social media platforms, and how they can be accountable for the harm that they're actually causing by leaving this information undetected. I think within those in the journalism ecosystem, one of the things I don't believe in a lot is fact-checking. I will be a devil's advocate today because one of the things we believe at Threats is that fact-checking is very reactive. It's not proactive in countering disinformation. And we've seen that with tech platforms. We do a lot of fact-checking. It's constantly running after information. However, one of the things we believe is adopting a more pre-banking approach. That is to say, being able to develop, I would call them like early warning systems, so that we are able to capture misinformation narratives before they even start spreading out. And then the other tip that I would put across is, again, building resilience, of course, within technology actors, but also civil society, because, again, within this information ecosystem, especially within Uganda, I think there's sort of a distance between tech people and civil society actors, or tech people who have access to information and knowledge on social media platforms. But however, there's a bit of a disarray. So I think it's important to bridge that gap between the techies and civil society actors, but also the layman, to be able to understand what's happening in the ecosystem. And then the other I would say is building tools that work within our context. One of the things we're doing at Threats is building a tool that is crowdsourcing deep and cheap fakes from across Africa, so that we will be able to run this through machine learning models, but also through language processing models, so as to be able to understand nuances of course, disinformation, but also AI-generated misinformation. And lastly, I would say investing more in open source investigations, because one of the things we also realize is that with disinformation, it's very easy for people to delete tweets. However, I think it's also imperative on us to learn how do we archive tweets or posts on social media platforms or on the internet before they are deleted, because when we archive them, we preserve them for a longer period of time, so that we can actually use them in research, but also to understand much better patterns of disinformation. Yeah, so those are the tips I would have off head within this conversation.
It seems Hagai is having connection issues. I saw him asking if others can hear you. I think even Godwin is off. I wonder what has happened. But I'll just take the liberty to speak about some of the things to the question Hagai asked. But before that, I wanted to say, first, from the numbers on this space, but also from someone said, when I posted the flyer, someone said something like, I'll come back when you are speaking about politics. And I was thinking, if these people know that this disinformation is actually highly motivated by politics. I think it was towards the 2021 elections when Facebook even closed some accounts from some regime propagandists. And it doesn't come from just regime propagandists, but because the regime has power, people that are on the other side are the ones that suffer. Because how many of even the political prisoners we are talking about now are there as a result of this disinformation? About some that are being accused of wanting to set Kampala ablaze, some that were accused of planning to stop President Museveni swearing in 2021. I think for me it came alive. I related with that, but also the consequences that maybe people never think about when I was being accused of paying protesters. I think paying people to protest. And I was seeing people from security agencies say that they went and told my sister that and whatever. And I said, yeah, if you are being accused of a crime in a country like Uganda, where the intelligence won't care about the truth, they will pick you up. You will end up in jail. And at the end of the day, I think for people like Masi and Hagai that have studied these trends of disinformation, they would tell you that it tends to get worse during electioneering period. And I think that we need to watch out for this. We need to, as an audience, maybe the media literacy that both Mercy and Dr. Gerard were talking about here might not reach everyone, but it's just knowing that people sharing information, and really no offense to a border person or a tax conductor, but people that might not necessarily have any information but have a phone to disseminate and publish whatever. So I think that health skepticism will be important in who is sharing this information, where else has it been shared. I think many Ugandans here are doing well, especially on social media in that sense, because I've seen them say, when something is shared on X, you see Ugandans say, let's see if other independent media houses have shared it, and you see them going specifically to check if Daily Monitor or NTV, and that's the reputation I was talking about earlier here. Yeah, so Haga, you found me concluding on that, and I was saying that we need to learn to question, or to first hear this from maybe more than 1, 2, 3 sources, but also sources that we know wouldn't just mislead people or wouldn't just publish information that they have not fact checked. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you very much, Agatha.
Agatha, maybe Agatha, just about that. I have there are cases where people post things, for instance, on WhatsApp, and they ask, guys, is this true? So you wonder why they are posting it when they are not themselves sure whether it is true or not. So they sometimes for verification. So sometimes people post with doubts and they are expecting the platform to help them to verify that information.
Yes. Lastly, Angelo, I'm going to invite you to make your last comments on where Gerard kind of left it off. The technology companies, X, Facebook, scaled back. Meta, the parent company of Facebook, scaled back on supporting funding initiatives, but also accommodating them that enabled a community on those platforms to fact check with the help of course, their internal expert teams. Does that leave us with the responsibility as, the people who are here to jump in? Media houses are underfunded, newsrooms are very thin. Should we, as Ugandans who would love to have reliable information, take it upon ourselves to kind of champion these fact checking? When someone posts something, say, guys, is it true? You feel the urge to jump in and or what are some of the things we should be doing in the absence of what, or in the to fill the gap left by these technology companies?
Right. Thank you, Haggai. In an ideal world, of course, democracy would lead to public outcomes which everyone would agree are positive, but we live in a world which is less than ideal. And there's no reason to expect that in the next 10, 20 years, because it's a fact of history that, bad things will continue to happen. So in that ideal world, I think, homegrown social media, maybe in the next 10, 15 years, will become an increasing reality. So hopefully when you build a Facebook or TikTok alternative in Uganda or this region, that perhaps will have greater control, and that maybe the algorithms will speak with much more nuance to our circumstances. And maybe if that time comes, we shall have less and less of the upheaval we are seeing in the conditions you describe, Haggai, where tech firms, both the technology and their profit motive, do not permit them to do the kind of things to keep us safe. But for those who are thinking in the policy space, I think there are also examples of how one could rethink the consumption of information. There's, I think, in Australia or New Zealand, attempts to restrict access, like we do with alcohol and cigarettes, for minors, especially in schools where they may be a captive audience. That access to smartphones may be restricted. Maybe that way you could deal with some of the harm that we are seeing. But I think also the UAE recently, and this is what I favor personally for the long haul, announced that they'll be starting an artificial intelligence curriculum for 6 to 8-year-olds. So they're starting this early. I think if we make the investment, Haggai, to educate people about misinformation and disinformation, and start with the most vulnerable groups of people, we can inoculate ourselves from some of the bad effects. I was one of those a couple of years ago who argued that there's no such thing as fake news, because ultimately what the truth content of that news is will be revealed. It may start off as a rumor, it will be debunked. It is in that cycle that we must find the sort of tools to protect the public. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Angelo. Russ Berry, do you want to have the last word? Louis Dramadri.
Thank you very much. I concur with everything that all the previous speakers have said. But I think just to add to that, I think this whole countering disinformation in Uganda starts with the character. What is your upbringing? What is your background? There's what they call in law contra bonus mores. If something is contrary to good morals, it should, as an upright standing citizen, you should know that this does not work and this works. Number two, I ran for election a couple of years back, and there were what they call propaganda machineries. So I was listening to Agatha, and these kind of systems. Now, if you're putting out credible information that the public needs to digest, the propaganda machinery is going to be employed completely I wouldn't want to say to debunk, but to distort what information you're putting out there. But at the end of the day, as Angelo has said, in UAE, those systems are being put in place to start teaching the young generation. I think those are things that we should start having here. Yeah, so thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you very much, our panelists.
Why is Dramadi's handle Raspberry? He should explain himself. we know him as Louis Dramati, and then he has SpongeBob on his avatar. Dramati, isn't this misinformation?
Angelo, I think that's an issue for another day.
All right. Thanks, guys. Thanks our panel for the wonderful insights, for taking off your time. Thank you very much, Dr. Gerard. Thank you, Mercy. Thank you, Agatha. Thank you, Angelo. Thank you, Godwin, and the rest of the team in the background. And thank you, everyone, for listening in and for supporting the space. We look forward to having you again on a space like this. We'll have more spaces on this subject, but most importantly, we invite you to follow the campaign that we are conducting. We are doing a video series where people are sharing experiences and insights. Please react to them, share your own perspectives, and let's all make a contribution to making the information ecosystem the kind we want to live and to live in and enjoy, and protecting the integrity of our information. I thank you very much. You've been a wonderful audience. Have a good evening.